We're from, Rupali and myself are from a company called Microsoft Open Technologies. We're a wholly owned subsidiary of Microsoft. How many people have heard of us? Yay! Every time I ask the question, the number of hands increases slowly. So that's good. That's about half the people in the room is good. So for the other half that don't know what we do, we're a wholly owned subsidiary. We engage with open source projects. We focus on interoperability between non-Microsoft and Microsoft technologies. So we have three strands within the company. We have an open standards group who work with, surprise, surprise, open standards. We have an open source engineering team who write code, and we're very much an open source code first organization. And then we have an evangelism team, and I'm a member of the evangelism team. Rupali is a member of the engineering team. As an evangelist, I try and engage with the open source communities, make them aware of the kind of work that we're doing, understand the problems that the communities are facing, and really provide a contact point. Engineers are also very visible, as you would expect in open source development environments. One of the great things about being a wholly owned subsidiary is that we have our own board, we have our own product, our own budgets. We don't have any products. We just work with open source communities where it's necessary to improve this interoperability. And that's really important because open source tends to move much faster than a billion-dollar group within Microsoft, who tend to move much slower, working with their customers, etc. And so we can act much more agile, we can act much more as the projects need to act. And this project that we're going to talk about is an example of that. Rupali's desperately trying to get her laptop working because that's got the demo on it. But in the meantime, I'll try and remember what intro slides I had. In terms of our background as a company, we come from, some of us, like Rupali, long-time Microsoft people, know how Microsoft works, know how it ticks internally. And some of us, like myself, I've been with Microsoft for a very short amount of time, relatively speaking. It's actually coming up for a year that I arrived in the US now. I actually arrived on July 4th, so I'll never forget that day. I told my children when we arrived that the fireworks were all for our arrival. They did believe me for a short while. But, yeah. I've been doing open source all my life. Some of you may have heard of the Apache Software Foundation. I'm currently the president of the foundation. I'm a member of the board of directors as well. I was doing that kind of work before I came here. And I hope, the reason I mention that is that I hope it shows that we're serious about open source. You know, I've been employed not to do what Microsoft do, as historically, but to help Microsoft understand how it plays in the open source environment, how it works with communities. You guys are an open source community. And so it's important that you understand that we're here to work with you and alongside you and to contribute the resources that are available through Microsoft to open source projects like Orchard. So, to the point, what did we do? Rupali's still struggling, so I'll still make it up as we go along.
You weren't able to make it work?
So what did we do? We engaged, first of all, with an organization in the UK called Microsoft UK Developer Platform Engineering. And this is a group within Microsoft who work with, they're a bit like we are. I describe myself as an evangelist working with open source communities. They're a little bit like we are, but they tend to work with engineers who are customer focused, customer facing for traditional Microsoft products. And this guy called Adrian Clark in the UK was a member of this group, and they'd identified a particular customer group that had a problem that wasn't being solved by any product that Microsoft had or any open source solution that was out there at the time. And this group of customers was Zine. And they wanted to say, well, how do we exist in a digital world? Thanks for the distraction, man. Give me a moment to remember the slide. Sorry, I just had a vision of what that looked like. Okay, so So this group of publishers wanted to know, how do we live in a digital age? How do we move from print into digital when print is largely moving to tablets and phones and so on? And of course the answer is, well, you make use of that platform. You use media. And one form of media, of course, is video. And what we need as a magazine publisher is a way of managing our content that would allow us also to manage our video contributions, but also leverage our existing business model of subscriptions. And we want to do that across the Windows platform. So this group, they came up with, in UKDP, they came up with a solution. The solution was essentially to build a CMS extension that built on top of what then was called Windows Azure, and is now, of course, called Microsoft Azure. Very important point, especially since we're from OpenTech. Linux on Microsoft Azure is a first-class citizen. Very important name change for many reasons. For us, for me at least, that's the most important reason. But in this case, they wanted to get a CMS system that would allow these publishers to manage video content and deliver them to Windows devices and to non-Windows devices. And so they built a prototype system in UKDPE on Orchard. So we get to the point of why it's relevant to this community here. And it went very well, and they did lots of business around this kind of thing, etc. But at that time, I was still in the UK, and I met Adrian one day, purely by chance, and he told me about this problem. I've got this code, it's a prototype. It's a public, because I'm from DPE, we don't build products, we help other people build products. And whilst our providers, our vendor, might choose to maintain this, they're only going to do it if they're making money from it. And we want to make sure that this lives beyond any single vendor like that. What can we do? And I said, well, I happen to know about this thing called open source, and what you could do is you could open source this, and it's really cool because you've built this on Orchard. So you have a start. We'll come back to that one in a moment. I forgot entirely about that slide. So you have a start. Oh, we've got clicker as well. Excellent. Thank you. So we have a start in the open source world. There is a community out there already that might be interested in this work. Okay, fine, said Adrian. Well, how do we do that? So this is all stuff I've remembered to tell you. We're up to Adrian now. And so it comes to MS OpenTech. I move over here on July 4th. Very shortly afterwards, Rupali tells me about this internal ask that we have from a team. Are we allowed to say who the team is? We had an internal ask from a team here in Microsoft for delivering a very similar solution, managing content in a CMS, video content in a CMS system. I said, aha, there's this code. He says he'll open source it through us. Do you want it? Yes, says Rupali. And long story short, we took the code and we used that as the base for the solution that Rupali built. A lot of it was rewritten, a lot of it wasn't needed for this particular use case, but all the code was made available under open source. But we still had that same problem. Who's going to maintain it? Even though this is now improved, it's now better than a prototype, who's going to maintain it? Could be MS OpenTech, but that's still the same problem as before. What happens if MS OpenTech no longer are maintaining this thing for this internal customer? What happens to that code? That's where you guys come in. Right, we're done, we can leave, they're going to maintain it.
All right.
So Rupali works with some of the Orchard team here in Redmond, and our original intention was that it would just be a plugin or a module, and that it would be part of the community in that way. But it turns out that actually the community members we were talking about thought this was a really valuable contribution. So we put a little bit of extra work into it, making sure it conformed to the coding standards and it was in with the build system and all the necessary things that the community wanted. End result, we are still maintaining it. Rupali will tell you something about that shortly when she does the demo. But now it's there, it's in core, it's there for you folks to maintain. So the purpose of this session is twofold. One, probably preaching to the converted in this room, but it makes sense for everyone to share the code in this way, not just to take the code and reuse it. It makes sense to build upon it, contribute it back where more people can use it and build on it. Now, I'm sure that's preaching to the converted in this room, but what I found in my role as an open source guy is we forget to tell people that. We forget to tell people who haven't yet figured it out that it's not just about use, it's also about contributing back. It's second nature to people like us who are doing it as part of our jobs or part of our training or whatever our individual motivation is. But it's kind of alien to most people. And we should never take it for granted that people understand that this kind of collaboration, from small ideas in one small organization all the way through to a large community like yours, they're not second nature to those people. So it's all about you and us, but also them, the people that we need to talk to that aren't inside this room. So we need to build the best video management solution, and this is the point that Rupali leaves because I was about to hand over to her. So what we're going to do now is Rupali will take you through a demo of the code that we've built in the hope that some of you will see some value in it, want to know more about it, want to start maintaining it, adding features, etc. So Rupali, if you're okay, you're up. I don't think the mic's for the room. I think it's just for video.
Okay, all right. So I actually have very few slides, and the rest is just demo. And the demo was on that machine, which is not presenting. So maybe we need to.
Can we remote desktop actually? You can remote desktop.
Sure, I can try.
Shall we spend a little more time?
Yeah, Ross, can you talk? Yeah.
Have you got any questions about anything? Almost anything. Nothing personal, please. While Rupali gets the demo set up.
Any questions?
The guys in the UK still using Orchard?
So the guys in the UK still using Orchard was the question. Yes, they are, and they're working with the publishers that they were originally working with to try and build a full end-to-end solution now, trying to get beyond prototyping. They're not yet there, but there is a lot of valuable experience being gained at the moment, and we hope that it'll go. There has been a few publications gone to the store using this. There's a publication in the UK called, I think it's called Computer Weekly, but I'd have to check given that we're being videoed, who put a series of training materials out as a Windows phone and a Windows 8 app that was based on this technology.
Other questions?
Just a basic question. What are you guys are getting ready to demo? Is it the Orchard Media Library? Is this something else?
Sorry?
Are you guys demoing like the Orchard Media Library that exists now, or is this something else that's been built?
So we actually integrated our feature into the media library. So it's one of the options that you can use to import files.
Okay, so it's already in place, right?
Yeah, it was shipped a month ago, I think. It was shipped along with 1.8.
So if you were to deploy Orchard for example, from the Azure portal, you'll get these features built in that Rupali's going to demo in a few moments. Okay, Rupali's still not quite ready, so I'm going to ask a few questions, get a feel for who we have in the room. How many people here are using Orchard as part of a service or a product that you're reselling? Okay. Yeah, about a quarter of the room. That's good. And how many people are using it internally for products that for internal product support or something? Another quarter. Okay. How many of didn't maybe use it for a product moving? Okay, about a quarter. And then the fourth quarter, they'll remain unknown as to why they're here.
I didn't get your first question. I fall into the first.
All right, just put your hand up for as many as you can. Okay, so those who are evaluating, how many of you are looking at it with video content as being important in the use case that you have? Okay, a few of you. Well, that's good. So there's some potential contributors to this code. And one of the really key things, as I've already highlighted for us, is the best takeaway from this is that people will see value in this and take it beyond. The use case that we have is fairly limited. It's complete end-to-end use case, but for example, we didn't do any additional work on the Windows clients, and we certainly didn't build any other clients. We just got internal management within Orchard. So it'd be great to see somebody take up that other code that was open source, the Windows clients, maybe port them to other platforms or build on those.
this might be a little bit outside of the things you could answer, but how much of that, the work on particularly like a media services library, how much of that is specific to how Azure works that or could be like, you know, plug in, I don't know what the other video service things are, but let's say someone wants to use a competitor or something. How much of that can be reused, or how much do you think it would be, you know, starting over?
Some of the things are pretty basic. So,
Okay.
Uploading a video or encoding, so you can get that basic things. So I would say a lot of the UI could be used for some other service, but of course the feature is using the Azure Media Services APIs through the .NET SDK. So you have to require all of that for the service. I think it might be just good to try a different feature versus the
So a kind of a corollary to that question, I'll come to you in a moment, is the players that we've used as well. So one of the things that we're doing here is MPEG Dash is a growing standard in adaptive streaming of media. It was just recently, Apple came on board supporting MSE, which is a standard in the browsers that allows you to do this kind of streaming. And so inside of this, we're using Dash.js, which is another open source project that OpenTech work on, which is an implementation, a cross-browser implementation of a streaming media player, which doesn't require any plugins. It's entirely in JavaScript, and it now works across the three of the four major browsers, i.e. Chrome, Chromium, of course, and Firefox. Sorry, not Firefox, Safari. Firefox is on its way. As soon as they have MSE support, then you'll have support for that as well. So we try to bring multiple projects together to try and address those things. But in terms of the code we've written for this, we wrote it against Azure Media Services because that's what our use case was. But your question is a perfect example of where other members in the community might want to say, well, let's put it into other services.
Have you tried to approach any like big TV companies or anything like that to see if they would buy?
We haven't.
Okay.
If anybody in this room wants to, go for it. There are some TV companies in one of Rupali's slides, actually. There are some TV companies that are doing this kind of work. The Azure team themselves, of course, are dealing with various TV companies with their media services, but not specifically with this implementation. I would suggest that this isn't really right for TV companies. It's a CMS, it's not a channel management thing, etc. It could be leveraged in that way. There's no question about that, but I would imagine their workflows are quite different.
More like serving videos on their websites. That's kind of
yeah, more likely videos on the website.
Not serving TV channels.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's definitely an opportunity for people there, and this is being used at scale. So if somebody wanted to do that, then we know that it works at scale. Whether it works at the necessary scale, well, that's a deeper question, but it works at scale at the moment.
Sorry, I got one other question.
Sorry, go ahead.
Is it extensible to the point that you could change it to use, for example, like Akamai? You can stream from Akamai
as a CDN.
Yeah.
So this was the question that Eric, very similar question to the one Eric was asking. It's not been designed today to be extensible. We designed it to solve the problem we had.
Right.
Okay. You could re-engineer it. You could use it as a template for a new plugin and just reuse different ways. It hasn't been designed today to make that easy.
Okay.
But it's just code.
Yeah, totally.
Had a question over here?
What's the name of that JavaScript plugin?
The media player one
Yeah.
is Dash.js. Yeah, D-A-S-H. It's on GitHub. If you search for Dash Industry Forum as well, that's the standards people that are driving the standards activity. Oh, well, we seem to be getting there. We're logging into an Azure. It's actually the laptop that's died, not the demo. So the reverse of the usual problem with doing live demos. Your actual machine dies. So we've probably got time for one more question, if anybody has one. And thank you for asking questions. It stops us feeling awkward up here. Worse still, I do another dance. Any more questions? Yeah.
As an Apache member, what would you advise to the Orchard community as for community building, for open source management, what you have seen so far?
Okay, as an Apache guy, what would I advise to the Orchard community? You know, that's a really difficult question, largely because I haven't seen a lot within the community. I can give you a very generic answer, so it's not really targeted at Orchard, because you might already be doing many of these things. But the key thing from an Apache point of view is equality across the community. So it doesn't matter how much you contribute, you don't get any more say than the next person. And that means that your small contributor, your individual coder who's hacking at the weekend even, or your small company in London who's doing a simple prototype for somebody in the UK, as is the start of this project, can engage with the project on an equal footing and have an influence over the future of that project. If you don't have that, then their strategy has to align very, very closely with your own strategy before they're prepared to invest. And so, unless there is a business driving Orchard, which I don't believe is the case, I think it's a community of businesses, you need to allow that community of businesses to define the strategy of the project as a community. Of course, that brings a whole load of governance issues, how do you do decision making, etc., but that's not the topic of this session, and Rupali is ready. I have to shoot off immediately after this session. I have another thing to do, unfortunately, which I'm likely to be late for now, but my email will be up at the end, I think. Feel free to email me, ask any questions, talk to Eric. Eric, hello. I'm a mentor within the Orchard, within the Outer Curve Foundation, and Eric can connect you to me through the Outer Curve Foundation to ask those and try and answer some of those questions as well. Okay, Rupali, you're up.
All right, thanks, Ross. Sorry, guys, there was some problem, but we can start now. So, how many of you actually are familiar with Azure Media Services? Wow, okay. All right, so maybe we should start there. So Azure Media Services is one of the services offered by Azure. It's like you have storage, compute, and so on. It helps, before we had this, we had people, storing files on some computers on-prem. Then they had an encoder that would, encode, an on-prem encoder. And they had their own solution built up in order to serve videos, through their education portal, or they have in-company website that they want to send out videos for, and so on. What Media Services does is take all of that and put it into the cloud. So everything is streamlined for you. You can upload whatever files you want into the cloud, into Azure. You can select what format you want to encode the video to, so it's playable across a set of different devices. And then you can, of course, download it, or you can stream the video and play it on these devices through apps or websites and so on. So that's the whole point of having media services. And you can see some of the things that it supports. Like I said, of course, ingestion, encoding. It's converting the format from one, it's called transcoding, but basically between two formats. There's content protection. So you can have DRM, or you can just have encryption to protect your content. Then there's on-demand streaming and live streaming, which is, I believe, in the preview mode right now, not publicly enabled. So this was launched, I think, in last year, beginning of last year, and there are a lot of customers using media services today. I think Ross gave you some feedback, a background on why we went ahead and integrated media services into Orchard. So from speaking with Sebastian, is our Orchard contact inside Microsoft, there were a couple of media websites that were using Orchard versus some other CMS. I listed just two of them, which seem to pop out, ITV and AMC Theaters. And they are doing what is our target customer for Azure Media Services. So it just made sense to put the both together so that you don't have to leave Orchard to interact with media services. So what we have was built out, like Ross said, as a module, but then we demoed it to the Orchard community, and right now it's a feature inside Orchard 1.8. So let's move on. So the scenario is covered in this feature.
Carry on, Elsie.
Okay. So the most basic thing, you need to be able to connect to media services.
We've had that problem earlier.
It's still recording fine. It's unfortunate for the audience. Is it your piece? It's your piece. It's yours, isn't it? It's your machine.
All right. So, so you need to be able to connect to media services, and you need to configure some settings. I'll show you what those are. Hopefully, the demo goes without any hitches. You can upload a video along with thumbnails and subtitles and so on. And using the built-in Orchard feature defining content, we have the ability to add data for an asset. That's how you store media. And then we have the ability to play the videos that we have uploaded to Azure Media Services. So, okay, so let's go to the demo. So this is an Orchard site. I think all of you are familiar with this. Before I move on, any questions so far?
Can you host a site like within the Amazon cloud or a separate server and subscribe to Azure Media Services?
Yeah, you can. Actually, that's a good question. The site I have is hosted in Azure. So if you're familiar with the websites and media gallery, the website gallery in Azure, I basically created a website here. It's the simplest thing. But you can host Orchard wherever you want. Yeah. Even if you host the site anywhere you want, there's one thing that you do need, and that's an account with media services to access the service itself. So to do that, you need to, it's just one of the services listed there on the portal. So I have different accounts here, but I'm going to use this one, which is created for this purpose, for this demo purpose. And this is the account name and the keys that you would need to be stored in Orchard so that Orchard can connect to media services.
You regenerate those keys later on your video.
Okay, so let's go back. So first of all, this is a site, and I have enabled the feature already. This is the one. We actually need to rebrand it since we rebranded a few months ago, or I think maybe last month, but right now that's the feature we have. So let me show you the settings first, and then we can go ahead and start playing around with this feature. So a couple of things. So like I said, the most important one is the account credentials. So this is the media services account that I showed you, along with the access key for it. Media services stores the files in a storage account that's associated with the media services account. So in this case, it's asking me what the access key is so that you can upload to storage directly from Orchard. Once you have the account set up, and you can go ahead and test it, I should, since everything is not working today. Okay, good. All right. There are some other things that you can put in the settings. The first one is dynamic packaging. So there are two ways you can encode in WAMs. The first one is you can kick off an encoding job, say what your input video is, and then you can format it to a different, you can pick another format that WAM supports, and basically the encoded video will be stored in your storage account. That's one way. The other way is there are a couple of formats where WAMs will dynamically encode it for you on the fly when you request the video in a certain format. So these dynamic formats, there are 3 of them. There's one that's Dash, which is an upcoming streaming format. Then there's also HLS, which is the one that is proposed by Apple. And there's the smooth streaming format. So what this is telling Orchard is basically, I want to enable dynamic packaging. So every time I encode to a format that supports dynamic packaging, I would like these 3 video URLs to be surfaced as well, so that user can take that and play it wherever he wants to play it. The second one is access policy. This is also something very specific to WAMs. When I say WAMs, I really mean Azure Media Services. Still getting used to the new name. The access policy basically tells Orchard what is the duration for which you have certain permissions. So for example, for this one, it's time span, but it's 5 years. And for 5 years, basically all the videos, people have read access to these videos. That's what this is set to. We have one access policy across all videos. You could have it per asset as well in WAMs. I'm just making it simple. File name extensions is what files you can upload, what extensions. You could upload an extension that's supported by WAMs, but it still may give you errors because the MIME type or the codec inside the format might be something that's not supported, and we haven't figured out a way to fix that. But this is at least the first level of filtering, which says these are the extensions you support or don't support. Okay. Then we have the encoding presets. So these are the presets that are supported by WAMs. Did anyone have a question? Okay. And you can enable one of them as the default. So when you do kick off an encoding job, it will pick that as the default. You can always change it if you want to. And then you have the subtitle files and what cultures you want to support through this module, a bunch of different things. These are the settings. At this point, you're good to start uploading videos and encoding and so on. So someone had a question on the whether we are demoing the media library. No, we're not. This is the media library, but what we are more interested in is how do you push files to WAMs, which is one of the options over here. So I believe My Computer, web search, media URL, all of these things come by default with media library. What we did is add the Azure media feature in here. So just give me a second. Okay, cool, my files are here. All right, so this basically lets you upload. It's a simple interface. Just going to upload a test file that I have, and once that's uploaded, let me go ahead and upload a thumbnail file. And these are things that come by default with a cloud video item, which is the container used to store the video files in Orchard. So once I do that, if you're familiar with Orchard, I guess you're familiar with these options. But basically, I want to go ahead and publish this now. And this will basically publish directly to media services. So once this is done, what you're going to see is a list of assets. So assets is the way we are storing video files in Azure Media Services. And everything that you see here is belonging to one cloud video item. So you can have multiple assets inside one cloud video item. And what you see is the file that I uploaded and then the thumbnail. So let's go ahead and kick off a encoding job. One thing to point out is, oops, okay. Let's see. It is one of those days. No, I think I've tested this website, so. Okay.
It was there a moment ago. You all saw it.
I'm not lying. I have the dev sitting in the audience, so I can vouch for that. Okay. All right. So what I was going to do is actually kick off an encoding job. So one thing I want to tell you is there are different kinds of jobs that you can have in media services. Encoding is just one type of a job, and that's the one that we support. But you can kick off an encryption job. You can also generate thumbnails if you don't have one statically uploaded. So those are the three kinds, and what we support is basically an encoding job. So let's see if this thing works now. All right. What? Okay. Not sure what happened. Let's see if the old one is still around. Okay, great. All right. see if this thing works. All right. It's just fussy.
Question for you: does when you hit like publish later or unpublish, what does that translate into in terms of Azure Media?
Yeah.
Services?
So in all cases, the video is pushed to into Azure Media Services. The difference between save/publish later and publish now is whether the content is available for you from the Orchard front end or not. If you have published, then it is available. Otherwise, you cannot access it from an Orchard page, a blog, so on. All right, so this is the default, and so I'm going to go ahead and kick off this job. And all right, so it's still working on it. While that thing completes, let me go ahead and go to content definition. I think you're familiar with this. So this is a cloud video item. That's the container for our assets. And right now, all the fields that you saw, like caption and alternate text, these are things that come by default with the cloud video item. But I want to go and add, let's say, a genre. And I want that to be available for every single video that I upload. So when I do that, the next time I start uploading any videos, what you will see is that field showing up. One thing we're looking at for the next version is there are a couple of fields that are always used, and we would like them to be available by default. So that's something that we are looking at. So let's see if that job completed. And of course, you can always go to the Azure portal to see the job status as well, and this is still running. So while that goes there, this is the page that will actually show you the video once the encoding is completed. Right now, it doesn't show you anything because we made a design decision not to be able to play the original video that you upload, because it usually comes in all sorts of crazy formats, and a lot of times it just doesn't play, and then we'll have people complaining why it's not playing. So we need to have it encoded to one of the supported WAMS formats, and then you will be able to play. So this is still working. And then there's this dedicated page for jobs. So say you're kicking off like 20 different jobs across different assets, then we have one page that gives you the status of all the jobs. You can also, if this had completed, you'll be able to archive jobs if you don't want to ever look at them. So that's the other thing that we have built in. And I believe that's about it. Actually, if I'm able to finish this job, then we can add it to a blog, and then all right, great. So this is done. So let's go back to the assets page, and what you'll see is there are a couple of different things now added here. Not only do we have the original video and the thumbnail, but you also have a bunch of different things showing up here. The first one is the encoded file. So I kicked off a multi-bitrate MP4 job, and that's what this first one is. The other three are showing up only because I enabled dynamic packaging. So it's showing up, it's basically surfacing URLs to these different formats, the three that I mentioned. There's one thing to keep in mind is right now these three formats, to get dynamic packaging, you need to have a reserved unit inside of WAMS. So it's basically a setup that you need to have. So let's go back over here, and if you look at the origins, which is where the video is going to be streamed, what we need to make sure is you have one reserved unit in WAMS in order to support dynamic packaging. Because right now in the shared pool where everybody can submit jobs, it's not enabled. So you need to have your own reserved unit, and then that's where you can get dynamic packaging URLs or videos surfaced. The other thing, I think the only other setting I had was under encoding. I just reserved one unit for my jobs. But if you don't, that's fine. It just uses the shared pool, and you'll be behind other jobs that are running. So going back here, so now that we have all these formats, one thing we need to figure out is which format are you going to play in Orchard. So basically, if you go here, let's just refresh this, and this is going to start playing some video that I uploaded, and we basically have, okay, we have the dash URL, we have the smooth streaming, HLS, and we have the statically encoded video. Which one are you going to play? So we came up with a logic. So we actually use the open source strobe media player. So that's what we use for playing the video in the Flash format. And if that's not available, then we see if Dash is supported in the browser. Dash is a new format. A few browsers support it. I think Ross can tell us which. I think it's IE. You already did. Okay. So we use that. That's an upcoming format. So we see if the browser supports that. And if not, then we fall back to the HTML5 player. So that's the order that we use. And actually, no, let me not go here. All right. So this is how you play a video that's been uploaded. And let's go back to the Assets tab. A couple of other interesting things that Sipke and Daniel thought of and came up with. One of them is if you don't want a format to be played in a player at all, then you can edit this and say, okay, I don't want it. So for example, the mezzanine one is marked as no for including in a player, so it'll never be picked to play in a player for the reason that I mentioned earlier, which is because it comes in different formats. And then the other thing is media query. So this is a concept from in HTML5. So if you have a video tag, and it's basically an attribute on the source field. So basically, you tell the browser what device does it support. So for example, you can say this video can only be played in a screen that's about 500 pixels big, or you can say, monochrome format, or there are a couple of different things. I think there are probably 20 different ways you can describe the video. And once you've described it, then the browser will check that when it's loading the video, and it will only play if it's able to support the requirements set in the media query field. So that's the use of it. Apart from that, of course, you can delete and so on and so forth. Let's go ahead and add this video to a page. I might still make it on time. Okay, so I'm going to go and select that video, and then add it to this page. When you do add it, it doesn't play. You cannot preview it. We don't have that functionality built in right now. But let me go ahead and publish this, and then we should be able to
That's fine.
So can I still use it?
That's fine. Test demo 2. Everyone in the room could tell you that. That's fine. Not Ross, okay.
Just don't forget the batch 2.
Oh my god. Sebastian, copy paste doesn't work.
Click on the link on the top left.
All right.
MCS demo the link.
MCS.
There's a link. Top left icon Orchard MCS demo. You see MCS demo on the top left?
Yeah.
Please click.
Well, it's okay, and then test demo /test demo -2.
/test demo -2.
playing?
Yay!
Then I really need some claps for this. It's playing. All right, cool. I think that's it. Did you have any questions?
Any questions in the room?
How many of you have built sites that use videos? Okay.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a
lot
lot.
more than those who are planning to.
We would love for you guys to try this feature and let us know.
What are the next step plans? Are there next step plans in terms of what you're going to do with it?
We have quite a bit of a backlog actually. These are some of the things that we are thinking of. So one is that you remember I sent you to the media services, the Azure portal in order to sign up for media service and all of that. We want to bring all of that in line into Azure. We don't have bulk ingestion, so a lot of people need bulk ingestion, which tells you maybe an XML that gives you all the videos, the metadata, and you just push it into Orchard. The other thing is you could have all your files stored in storage in Azure. All you need is for them to show up in media services. So basically importing from your storage account is one thing that we'd like to support. Task chaining. I mentioned that the only job that we supported was encoding, but you could have encoding, take the output, encrypt it, do something else. So that's something called task chaining, and we could support that. There were a lot of others, actually. I think this is just a small list. Yeah. So you had a question?
What type of browser compatibility do you have? Like, how far back does it go? I currently am using another video hosting service, and I use it because it's so backward compatible. The switch to this would hinge on whether it can use older browsers and slower machines.
I can tell you what we tested it on. IE10, Firefox, and Chrome. I think we did not test for Safari, right?
Yes,
I don't
it
think
works. It works.
Yeah, but those are some of the things may not work because, like for example, Dash is not supported in IE9.
IE10.
IE10.
But it would still play here because you have smooth streaming available.
Yeah, we have Flash enabled, so we would have to test it. We haven't tested it.
Yeah, okay,
makes sense. You need to conduct your own tests.
Got it.
Were you one of the people who had a media website on our?
I have some media website.
Okay.
If you do some testing, it would be great if you could let us know via the forums. You know where they are. There'll be a link coming up in a minute as to what your successes and failures were. That's useful.
I'll be part of the community.
Yeah, exactly.
Any other questions? So, yeah.
Well, this is more of a media services question.
Yeah.
But, hey, thanks. Like my colleague over here, I've had to build sites that support video, and the service that I was using is able to sniff the compatibility downstream and then send out the correctly encoded video, which I thought was pretty sweet. Is that a feature of Windows Media Services, or what you guys are thinking of building?
The player that we have needs to be fed the locators to the videos, the one that we have built. But there are lots of players that Media Services had put together. There's one which is the Microsoft Player Framework. So I'm not sure how those players work, but I'm aware of other third-party players where all they get is the metadata, and then they pick the right. Yeah.
I think Media Services doesn't do that. It's up to how you're using Media Services, but I believe this does its best bet to support whatever browser is.
Yeah, ours is it has that logic that I told you.
Right.
Our player does that, but I'm sure we can follow up if that's something that's interesting.
Like if I push up a video, could I say encode it in these 4 formats? Because I know that one of those 4 is going to be the one that I need downstream.
Yes, you can.
Cool.
And this will do its best to play it in any browser that comes through.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much.